Hey folks, Nick here from another BookTube channel, and today I'm going to be talking about the Gatekeeper trilogy by Christopher Golden and Nancy Holder. These are Buffy the Vampire Slayer tie-in novels. I've read a handful of these novels up to this point, and I have noticed a trend in them, in my reaction to them, that I was finally able to kind of pinpoint while reading this trilogy. Because everything before this has been a standalone novel, but there was some aspect of this that I think is an inherent flaw of a media tie-in book, and I would like to opine about that for a little while. This is also going to be a brief review of the series itself, so I'll start with that. I'll start with at least a plot synopsis. So there are 3 books in the series. The first is Out of the Madhouse. The second one is called Ghost Roads, and the third one is called Sons of Entropy. So what's the gist here? It's the apocalypse again, as it always is when it comes to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm going to assume you know Buffy if you clicked on this video. If you don't know Buffy, then you should go watch it. I believe it's all on Hulu in the United States right now. It's a great show. It's my favorite of all time. But Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the Scoobies are trying to save the world again. There is a mystical gatehouse in Boston that is overseen by the Gatekeeper, who is a very old sorcerer. And the purpose of the gatehouse is to basically keep locked up all of these mythical and fantasy creatures that would cause absolute chaos if they were to be allowed free in just the regular world. But they can't be banished back to their home realm for whatever reason. So they're stuck here, and they're stuck in this house. The house is what the Gatekeeper uses to keep them away from the normal people. But the Gatekeeper is very old, over 200 years old, I believe. And he is dying. And he needs to be able to pass on the responsibility to his heir. The heir, the young boy, has been kidnapped by a evil group led by an evil sorcerer who is immortal called El Maestro. And El Maestro has this this group that answers to him called the Sons of Entropy. So they're his agents that he deploys over the world to, cause mayhem and problems. Their ultimate goal is to bring the gatehouse down, free all those creatures, cause the apocalypse, cause chaos, and then for them to rule over that chaos. Of course, you can never rule chaos because those are disparate ideas, but that's beside the point. So it's a good series. It's pretty fun. The first book is definitely, in my opinion, the best one in the series because it just has the most fun in terms of action and set pieces and just monsters and stuff like that. But overall, it does get a bit long in the tooth, gets a little sluggish, and kind of feels like it's spinning its wheels a little bit. And that's going to lead directly into what I feel is an inherent problem with media tie-in novels, which is that nothing can truly happen in them in terms of development. So these books were written concurrently with the TV show. So these were not after the fact. These came out, I believe, I don't know when exactly year-wise, but the story itself takes place during season 3 of the show. So because I've watched the show, I know everything that needs to I know everything that needs to remain true in order for the show to remain true. And so that takes a whole lot of suspense out of this trilogy because any danger that the characters find themselves in, I know is short-lived and fake. It's a fake danger. There's no real suspense there because nothing could possibly happen to disrupt the status quo. And that's a problem when you have an action series like this, because you need to feel some kind of tension in an action book. There needs to feel like there's some kind of danger. And usually you're able to accomplish that if you have a long-running series. you can have side characters that can be in danger, or you'll introduce new characters and be like, oh, they're going to be like the red shirt. They're going to die to show how dangerous the situation is. But with the Buffy books, for the most part, particularly in this series, there's not a whole lot of new characters that get introduced. It's a lot of just the existing side characters. So you've got Willow and Giles and Xander and Oz and Cordelia. Spike and Drusilla show up. You've even got Ethan Rayne that makes an appearance. And none of these characters can end this series in any different position than when they started, because you can't do something in the books that's going to radically alter what would happen in the show. I don't think that that's ever happened. I'm not a genius or expert in novelizations or tie-ins, but I can't imagine there's a situation where a popular TV show needed to make an adjustment to fit into something that happened in a tie-in novel for that series. You know, the show is where all of the major developments have to happen. So the books feel stagnant because of that. And it's not just like character deaths or character danger, because it's also just like character relationship development. You know, character dynamic can't change. You know, Buffy and Angel can't have a relationship changing conversation or moment in these books, because that needs to be saved for the show. So all they can do here is expound on conversations that they've already had and already kind of exhausted from the show. You just build on top of it. And so you have now multiple aspects where the action is kind of stale because there's no real stakes, and the character work is also a little stale because there's no progression that could possibly be made. And so you're kind of left with, well, that's it. Like, what are you left with in a tie-in novel like this? You're left with the general plot, you know, the set pieces, what types of monsters there are, and you're left with like dialogue and banter. That's really what Buffy's known for. The best part of the Buffy TV show is the banter, the dialogue between the characters as friends, as enemies. You know, like that's really the hook of it. The monsters are also pretty cool, like getting different monster designs. There's a lot of entertainment from that. And also the fact, I mean, the show, things can actually happen. There are surprising character deaths and, you know, stuff like that. But in terms of what you can recreate here, you can recreate the banter and the dialogue. And for the most part, they do. Christopher Golden and Nancy Holder, I think, have a pretty good grasp on these characters and their personalities and how they would react in certain situations. Sometimes there's some stuff that feels a little bit off, but for the most part, it reads true. But there's only so much you can stretch witty dialogue and banter and have it be entertaining. These are kind of long books. These 3 books are almost 1,000 pages. And in it, it's full of action, which has no stakes. And that's not a pun considering vampires, but it's action with no stakes. It's character interactions with no stakes. You can't really go anywhere. So you're just kind of spinning your wheels for almost 1,000 pages. And the plot is fun. The plot gets you a lot of interesting monsters, a lot of interesting set pieces. So that's kind of enough to make this particular trilogy enjoyable. But I noticed it in the standalones as well, where if the main storyline isn't particularly creative, the book just kind of falls flat because nothing else can really happen to rescue it. It's just the status quo must be maintained, and that's I think that's what I'm saying is an inherent flaw of media tie-in books like this. Now, there are shows that can be immune to this because of just the very nature of them. An example of that would be Columbo. I've read 2 Columbo novels at this point. I read The Grassy Knoll, and I read this one, The Helter Skelter Murders. And they were a lot of fun. This one in particular, Helter Skelter Murders, this book had no business being as good as it was. And it works because the nature of the Columbo TV show, like Columbo is a very affable, fun character. He's charming and goofy and fun and silly, but also like riveting television. Um, but there's nothing like he doesn't have relationships. Like we never meet Mrs. Columbo. There's no other character dynamic at play. It's just whoever the murderer is that episode, and then him, and he's playing off of them basically. So you could inject that formula into anything, and it'll work into any format, and it'll work because you're not going to fundamentally change Columbo. He's still just going to be the same old Columbo. He doesn't change. That's kind of it. That's the appeal of him, is that he is always affable and charming. All you have to do is put him in a situation where he's got an interesting murder to solve. So when you're writing novels about that, just focus on the case, and then build a cool mystery, build a cool murder that people are trying to get away with, and then you inject this little character in there, this little man in a trench coat, and how would he catch them? Like, what would he do? Like, that's fun, and that works really well. But when you have a show that is about characters arcing, characters developing, characters dying, then something like this that goes on for 1,000 pages, it just kind of feels stale. It just kind of falls a little bit flat to me. So I'm curious if you feel the same way. I imagine for a lot of people, the appeal of a media tie-in is that nothing can change. Like, it is kind of a comforting thing to just spend time with characters that you like and know that they're all going to be kind of safe at the end and nothing's really going to be different. It's just another adventure for those characters. For me, that portion of it didn't quite work because Golden and Holder are not like the best action writers. They're not the funniest writers. They're good enough. So like there wasn't enough to make up for the fact that nothing can really change. So let me know your thoughts about media tie-ins, if you agree with me or not. Let me know if there are particularly good media tie-ins that you've read that you recommend that are able to kind of break that restriction in some interesting way. Let me know about them in the comments. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today, but now it's time to get back to reading.